So in our past few videos, we've looked at how to make a combo box, make a browser for files, and then also put those files into that field, while also giving a text field to put in some information. Let's look at other ways that we can do stuff with UI, in this case with a tree. A tree in scripting UI is essentially the same thing as a table in like anywhere else you see it. For example, Excel is a table of information. If we were to make that in scripting, that would be considered a tree. So first, we need to get the correct information to actually build the UI and to access information from Resolve. So first, let's get the UI stuff in here. So we're accessing stuff from the UI with the UI manager and dispatcher. So now we can come down here and access the information from Resolve with our timeline, project, and media pool. All this is going to be important for us later. And then I'm going to add on something else to this, which is going to give us a list of all the actual items in certain tracks. So we're just going to paste these two in here, and these are just two API functions that just get the item list in your desired track. You can put video, audio, and subtitle in here. And then this is the actual index of the track, and it goes from 1 up. It does not start at 0 like some other things do. So now this is all the information that we need to get for now. Let's go ahead and come down and actually start to build our UI. We're going to actually build this out a different way this time, but it's obviously going to start out the same. So we're going to do local win equals dispatcher, and then it's going to be add window. So then we're going to use our parenthesis and then a squiggly bracket, enter, and that's going to open it up for us to use. We can type in ID, and we're going to set the ID to just example UI for this case, since this is me showing off an example to you. But literally fill this in with whatever you want. It does not have to be anything particular. Same thing with this. In fact, any of these that you see after local, you can put whatever word you want there and it will still work. Just refer to that word whenever you want to refer to, for example, the media pool. It's just these words so we know what it is really easily later on in the code. But like I could make this audio clips with no underscore like that, or I could make it with a dash. Actually, I couldn't make it with a dash because variables don't like dashes. So we can put underscore, and that's going to do it for us. After ID, we can do a comma, and then we can put in our window title. And I'm just going to say more UI features, because that's what it is. It's more UI features for you guys to enjoy and use. This is a really good way to organize everything. A tree is a fantastic way to just barf out information to the user. You're able to select things, multi-select. You can add different things like checkboxes. You can do a bunch of different things, including adding images into individual columns and rows. Now, in the past videos, we've used geometry, and we've set this to a table. And then we'd set this to the position, X and Y on the screen. And then after that, it would be just the height and width of our actual window. We're going to delete that, and we're going to actually look at something else here in a second, which is going to force our window to stay in the center, but it's also going to stop our window from being able to be expanded. So people are going to have a fixed window size. That may give you a hint as to what the next thing we're going to use for that is called. Now, we're also going to add in this little extra area called window flag. This is a special thing for these windows where it's kind of hard to find the information on this, but essentially this will give you the ability to set certain properties of the window. There's actually quite a few things that we can put into here to make these do different things. But just for our case, we're going to set this to be a window and for the window to always be on top. So just like how you've seen applications that they won't go behind the application you're working in, so we can just make this a window, and we're going to set this equal to true, and then window stays on top hint, and it's called a hint. I don't know for sure why. Maybe someone out there does know that can tell me. But then we can make that set to true as well, and that's going to do it for the top part of this. I am then going to do a couple of enters down. You don't have to have everything super close together. You can do spacing between each of these, and that's totally fine. But organizing it like this may be smart, because then you're organizing it like, okay, this is the header section, this is like the window important information, and now we're getting into more of styling down here. This is going to be a margin. We're going to set the margin to 10. 10 is essentially saying 10 pixels. It's also not colon, that is Python, not Lua. So now we can do our regular V group. We're going to set this to have an ID of root. You don't have to have an ID in this. This is just if you want to call this section as a whole later to do some extra stuff. This is just good practice to start with though. And then this is where we're actually going to set our fixed size. That's the words I was trying to point out to you earlier. So we can just make this fixed size, not Zides. And we can make this equal to another table, and we're going to set the width and height. So we're going to set this to be 600 wide and 700 high. I may have those backwards. Editing me, please tell me if I'm wrong. Okay, if you didn't hear anything from me, then I probably am right here, unless I forgot, which is possible. I'm just going to put all of the UI elements in this main root. You could obviously separate them out into different H groups and V groups. So we're going to start by putting in our tree, and we're going to just focus on the tree for now. I can add in other stuff in here later to make this a little bit fancier, but we're just going to do ID, and then I'm going to make it example tree. Now we're going to set a few different things for this to make it kind of do what we want it to do. Some of this stuff is for styling reasons, some of this stuff is for functionality reasons, and I'll explain it as we go. First one is alternating row colors. This one may make a lot of sense to you. This is mostly a styling thing. So it's literally alternating row colors, spelled out just like this, and then you can type in true. So this is taking in a boolean, not a string, not anything else. And now we also need to put in root is decorated. Everything is capitalized, and we're going to make this false. So first off, let's go ahead and put all these in, and then we can actually see what they're doing on and off so you have a better understanding. Root is decorated essentially means to make it as easy to understand as possible without us breaking everything down about a tree. It takes away a padding from the front of the words and puts them more up against the left side of the actual tree. Otherwise, there's a small padding there because you can nest tree items together, and that will put a little drop down item there, but it's going to always have a little gap there if you don't put this here. And we'll look at that after this. We can also put in header hidden. This is just going to say, is the header items that actually is labeling each of the columns actually visible? We're going to say it is not hidden, so it is visible. And that's going to do it for us for the tree. We're going to go ahead and just jump all the way down here and start to make everything show. We know what we need to put in here. We just have to put in our regular window. It's just the window variable name, and then show, and then you want dispatcher, and then run that loop, and that's going to run until it finds exit loop somewhere else in the code. And also then after the run loop is over, you are going to want to hide the UI. Run loop is essentially just a UI based looping system to where it'll still let things happen in the actual Fusion script, but it's going to not do anything after run loop until it finds exit loop is what it's saying. So you could put down in here, print script finished, and that will only print after run or after exit loop is finished. And now to actually make this close, we have to put in another function in here, and we've already talked about this before. We just need to get the window variable on, and then example UI, that's the ID of the window, and then close. And then we can put an EV in here just to capture the event. You don't necessarily have to put EV in there, but just so you don't forget for other things where you do need that, it's good to just put that in there for good practice. And we're actually going to look at EV later on to actually use that for something else. And in here, we're just going to put in our dispatcher exit loop with our two parentheses to just call it a function. And that's going to do it for actually showing our UI. So let's go and hop into Resolve and take a look at that. So as we see, my timeline here has a bunch of clips, various clips from either past videos. I do a Rickroll, and I have a few Fusion comps here and there, some generators, text plus, all that kind of stuff. But we can go ahead and come up here to workspace, find our script from scripts. I have my script in the utility folder. Let me go and actually show you where that is so we don't forget. So you can come to your scripts folder, and you can actually find this if you just, on a Windows, come down to your hourglass here and type in %appdata%, and that takes you to roaming. Now you're able to go to Blackmagic Design, DaVinci Resolve, Support, Fusion, and then you can find your scripts folder right here. And now we're going to hop into utility, and I just have my tutorial in a folder called tutorials. You can put them wherever you want. This is just a good place to put them for me because it, keeps it nice and organized. So I have it in utility so that no matter what page of Resolve I'm working in, that script is going to show up at the top of the list. So if I come into here, workspace, scripts, we'll find my examples, and here's the one I'm looking at to actually, teach you guys. Then we have tutorials right here. It's up here way at the top with my other faves folder, examples, and Spark effects. So we can come into here and tutorials, and we can click this, and we can see a big tree fills in this space. We can also see, though, that it's drifted down some. You may be asking, why is that? And also, why are there these weird gaps? Let's take a look at something else. But if we come in here right before we have it showing, if we just type in win recalc layout and then make that a function, that's going to, as it states, recalculate the layout and just see, okay, has anything changed from initiation, or are there weird things going on like fixed size? If so, let's reposition things and reorganize things to look better. And launch it, and we can see that looks 1,000 times better. Generally speaking, if your UI doesn't look like how you were expecting it to look, recalc the layout and it's probably going to end up looking a lot better. Otherwise, you probably did something wrong with either a weight somewhere or something else is just going a little bit haywire. Cool. Let's go ahead and actually make this table look better. We can already see we have this is the header. We can see it's not hidden. And then we have alternating row colors, it being true. So we can see that the rows are alternating. Easy. So let's actually go ahead and put some stuff in here. And then we can take a look at actually turning all those things on and off so you can see the difference. Right over here, right after we actually have the UI being made, I'm going to type in something else we may not have looked at before. I'm going to type in local, then I'm just going to type in items equal to when get items. This is just going to look at the variable for Windows. This is going to take the entire environment here, and it's just going to get all the items. So it's going to get everything that's in here. So now we can call the IDs of anything that's in here. So root, example tree, I think even example UI we can call the ID for, and then we can actually do various things to that element with that ID. So now we can come on down here and we're going to type in items. So we're going to look at the entire items list, example tree, and then we're going to do set header labels. You can do set header label and then do parentheses, set it, a string like this, and that's going to set one of the headers. Or you can do set header labels and then put a table / array in here, and you can just set them all at once. So it's just less lines of code. We're going to get the video name. So we're going to look at the track video like we have up here for video clips. We're going to get the actual name for that, put that into this column, check to see if it has an audio that's linked with it. We're going to probably say yes or no because it's a question. And then we're also going to put down the start time. The start time is where things get a little more interesting, and we'll take a look at that here in a minute. But for now, we need to actually set the column widths, because if we take a look at this right now, we're going to see something's a little bit off about this. We're going to see we have video, the audio is right next to it, and then we have start time with a huge gap to the side. And that's because it's just going to try to auto-complete and auto-place everything. Oh, I don't think I actually have a thing there. Hold on. Yeah, so that's my mistake. I didn't actually separate this out with the correct amount of quotation marks. If you caught that, let me know in the comments. These are still really, really close together. They should not be that close. We want them to be a little more evenly spaced, or in our case, we want the start time to be like right up against the side because there's not really a lot of information from that. And then audio is also going to be right next to that, probably pretty small. Most of the space is just for showing the actual video name. And you can reorder these yourselves by just dragging them over, and that's a pretty good job. You can drag this over, make that little smaller. This is essentially what we're going to be putting together just automatically. Now we can go ahead and once again call items and example tree, and then we're going to instead do a dot because we're not calling a function this time. We're calling a part of the element. So we're going to call column width, and then we're going to get the 0, that is the first column, and then we're going to set that equal to 475. So why is it 0 and not 1? If we've looked at anything else with Lua that's like a table or an array, it's going to start with a 1. So why does this start with a 0? Your guess is as good as mine. It may be a parity thing from where it actually comes from. I think this maybe comes from HTML a little bit, so it might be left over from that, but also it's just kind of how the UI system works. Maybe it's so that it's more in parity with every other scripting language like JavaScript and Python that we can use. So maybe it's just made for that. It's a little bit more confusing if you're using Lua, so I can understand the problems where that can cause. I'm going to then duplicate this line 2 more times. In VS Code, I can just press Control D a couple of times and that's going to duplicate the line I'm on. And then I can just change these numbers to be 1 and then change that number to be 2. And then I'm going to make this one 50, so it's a little bit bigger so we can see the words a little more. And this one's 20. This is not going to put these all the way over to the right side because if you looked at it before, they kind of expand from the left. So if the left one expands out, the other ones are at that certain distance away. So now if we come over here, tutorials, once again, we look at this. This is looking a lot better. We have video, audio, and start time. That looks pretty dang good. And we can see, even though this is 50 and this is 20, this still has quite a bit of space because this isn't taking it all the way over to the side. So there you go. Now let's fill this with actual information. This is where we're actually going to use the information from video clips and audio clips we got up here at the very top. We're going to ignore media pool for right now. That's not going to really be a thing until a little bit later. So we want to go ahead and loop through everything in the video clips. And how we're going to do that is not going to be doing a for I pairs. That is always a good thing to do theoretically, but we don't want to do it in this case because our table is not set up in a way that it can be done in order. If we did pairs, we could do it, but because that's not a certain order, that's not in the actual order that they're coming in at, we don't want it to do that. We want to actually do a different for loop, which we looked at in the very first video for Lua. We want to do for and then I equals blah, 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 blah. This is going to set this up to where it's super easy to use for us. We want I to be equal 1, and then we want to remove these two, because these two are not really needed, because this is the max number that the loop is going to end at, and this is just the steps that we're taking to get there. And if this is not there, if this last item, the steps, is not actually in our little for loop, it's just going to default to 1 anyway. So we can just get rid of that. So we can get rid of that and just put in instead a hashtag or pound symbol. And this is going to be number of, essentially. Like this is count of the following thing you put here. And it's generally for tables and arrays. I don't know if there's any other use cases for it, but we can put in video clips, and this is going to give us the total count of video clips in the timeline track we have selected. And we can see we chose the first track because that's what I have the things in. If you wanted to, you could maybe give the user an option to choose one of these beforehand with a UI. That's up to you, but we're just going to use the one because that's all we have to use. This is where things are going to get a little bit more confusing. If you're not already lost, you're about to join the people who are already lost. We're going to be adding things into the UI, and we're going to set each column to have its own text. But it's all going to be under one item because it's all the row item. First, we have to create the new item. We have to actually give it like our start function. So we can set local, and we're just going to call it it. You can also call it item. Doesn't matter. I'm just going to call it so it's easy for me to copy the code I'm already using. And then we're going to set this to equal to items again, example tree again, and then get the function new item with that function call. This is then going to allow us to use it anywhere that we want to add new things into this new item. And then we're going to add this new item in at the very, very end. So first we're going to do if there is a video clip at this index. So essentially we are using the I variable right here as the actual array index or the table index. So if there's a video clip at this certain index, then we're going to add it. So we're going to do it.text, and then we're going to do, again, that same bracket thing we just did, and then we're going to put a 0. So that is going to be the first column, like we put up here with the column widths. And we're going to set that text equal to video clips under the ID of I, and then use the function get name. So this right here, if we look at the actual API documentation, this is a timeline item object. This has a bunch of functions and variables that you're able to grab from this and, assign to this using, stuff like this. That's a lot of thises in one sentence, but this is essentially just what you can see on the timeline. This is the Rickroll video. And then we're just going to use the function get name. So it's just going to literally get the rickroll.mp4. Whatever it is, right? After this, we're going to want to check through all of the audio clips because we want to do a similar loop that we're doing for the video clips for the audio clips because we want to see, does the time codes match up for the audio and the video? If it does, then tell it yes. If it doesn't, then tell it no. So this is what we're going to do. We already have the idea for what we're going to do for this loop. We're going to do another for I equals blah, 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 blah. We're going to just copy this exact same thing, and I'm just going to replace video with audio. Okay, now we have that going for us. We're going to say if there is audio clips, and actually we're going to make this not I, we're going to make this in, so there's not confusion inside the actual functions here. So this is now in, so whenever we're actually talking about the audio clip, it's an in index. And then whenever we're talking about the video clips, it's an I index. So that maybe hopefully helps you determine what they are. These two can be whatever you want. They don't have to be I or in or even single letters. So we're going to say if audio clips at this index of in does exist, so just if audio clips in, nothing else, just like how we're doing up here. We're also going to then check and the video clips at I's start time, so the current video clip we're looking at, the get start, this is the start frame that it is equal to, and then we're just going to copy this again, and then replace video clips with audio clips, and then replace I with in. So now this is looking like the exact same thing we have up here, and then just get start. So if the start times match up, then we're going to set the audio to say it does have audio. So we're just going to set it to it.text at the ID of 1. So we're going to set it to 1 because this is the second column. And then we're going to set this equal to just the string of yes. This is just us telling the user, yes, this has audio matching with it. And then at the end of this, we're going to put down break, because then we're going to save up our resources so we're not just constantly looping through this. If it does match, we're just going to stop the loop. Break is just stopping the for loop. It's not going to stop this for loop, just this one. Come down here after the for loop, we're going to just say if it.text, and then we're going to say this exact same column as the yes is. We're going to say if it does not equal, if in the squiggly equals is a does not equal, and then we're going to set that equal to this string of yes. So if it is not a yes, then let's take this code right here, put it here, and then replace this with no. So if this does not say yes, so if this did not find an audio to match, then let's just say no. Easy as that. In my notes over here, I just have another if video clips I, and we can do this again, and then there's really no problem with that, but we also don't have to do that. Since we already are doing this exact same check up here, we can do the next column up here with this. Since it doesn't really matter the order that we're actually storing them in, it just matters the column that we're assigning them to. So if we go and do it.text at the ID of 2, so this is now the third column, this is now our time codes, we're going to do the simple thing of what we've already done before, video clips I, and then we're going to just do get start, just like how we did down here. And if we wanted to, we could maybe even make things a little bit faster for us. What we can do is come into here and set this equal to that. And then we can also take this and set a variable for this. And that now is a variable that we can just call whenever we want. So we can call this down here and we can call it down here. Really easy. So now we can even replace the get name function there with that. So now we're only calling the function to get start time once. So if you have a bunch of things happening in this loop, you don't have to worry about this slowing it down every time you have to re-grab that name. You're only grabbing the name once. And you're only grabbing the name if the clip actually exists. So then what we can do is come down here and do that. And then we can even do in here or no clip. And the or right there is saying use this variable, but if this variable is nil, say something else here. And in this case, we're saying no clip instead of the name. So if there is no video clip on this index and this comes up as nil, or if this never even comes up at all, then it's just going to default to no clip. And we can even set this to default to or, and we can set this to a string. That's important to note, a string of, we'll just say unknown. You may have noticed that we put this as a string, but this is coming back as a number, or at least you may have maybe guessed it. This function right here gives you the number value and not a value as a string. So what we have to do on here is just type in a toString and then put parentheses around whatever is the number. All right, that is everything we actually have to do. We're going to do some more stuff later on to make this a little more interesting, because we're going to notice this only gives us the frame, does not give us the time code. We launch our script, we're going to have an error. Why do we have an error? You know what? We actually never did add it to the tree. So let's actually go and try to add it to the tree first. So let's go on down here to the very bottom of our loop, and we're just going to type in items.example tree, just like we have before. And then at the end, we're going to type in add top level item. This, as you may guess, is going to add the new item as a top level item. Why is it called that? Because like I said earlier, you can nest your items together. So we have top level items, otherwise known as parents. Then under that we have children of top level items. That's where things get a little more confusing, and we're not going to talk about that today, but I just want to give you a brief overview of what that actually means. So then we can just type into here it, and that is then going to give that variable into there. Also make sure each of these words are capitalized. So now the it variable that's right here is then being put into here. Also, this is wrong because I forgot to capitalize the I on this as well. Remember your capitalizations, they're important. So also, if we look right here, I need to capitalize the N on name. This is why you got to check yourself. You may have errors like that, don't worry. Sometimes they're really easy to fix. Sometimes you may have to look a little bit harder to actually learn what's going wrong. We can see we have the video name, it has audio, and there's the start time. And we can see all these start times are in frames. And we can see we have text, background, vignette generator, like all these different crazy kooky things. Some of these are videos, some of these are fusion effects, some of them are generators, some of them are titles, like this text plus. And you can see we're able to select things in here. which is what we're going to be using to do something else really cool today. We're going to do just a couple more things to actually make this even cooler. So the first thing we have to do is make these into actual time codes. And there's a simple function we can do with this. I say simple. It's not as simple as it may first seem. So we have the start time, and I'm going to replace this with start frame. And then I'm going to type in some extra lines of code in here. They're going to come up as errors because we don't have the functions yet, but I'm just going to lay out what we have to do. So with the start frame, we need to get the timeline clip, and the timeline clip is the timeline in the media pool, which is what we wanted the media pool for. And to make this super easy, we're going to use a function for this because this is going to be able to be used for lots of different things. So get timeline clip from media pool. As you can expect, that's what it's going to do. This is a custom made function that was made by Dan, who made Snap Captions. Huge props to him. I will let you know probably down on the bottom of the screen here what his full name is. I totally spaced his actual last name, so I'm sorry. And then for this, we're going to get the timeline variable that we made at the very top of the page up here. And we're going to use the same function of get name. And that's just going to give us, once again, the name of the timeline. I don't really need to explain these things to you. They make the variables, or they make the functions pretty easy to understand. You can see it doesn't exist, so we just have to worry about that in a second. And then we're also then going to get the FPS, which is going to be using the timeline clip. We want to get clip property, and we're going to get full capitals FPS. If we were to return clip properties with nothing in here, it's going to give us the full list of all the properties. So if you want to see all the properties that you're able to pull from media pool items, go check that out. Otherwise, we can put in one last thing to just update this. So we just want to bring into here one more function. We're going to just type in convert frame to time code, give it 2 parentheses, and we're going to put in the start frame and the FPS. Okay, this is really cool. I forgot to make this not local, so make this just a global variable. It's going to give us these squigglies because these lower class names, while global variables usually have uppercase names. We can put down underscore capital G dot, and that makes that variable global so it can be accessed anywhere. You can just do that for all of these just so it gets rid of our squiggly lines on us. So now let's do the fun stuff and actually get these functions in our code. I'm going to go way up here above our UI and then below these variable calls, and then I'm just going to put down a couple functions in here, and then I'll explain them here in a second. So let's get the timeline clip from media pool first. I'm going to copy this to make sure that I have it spelled right, so we can paste it in there. There we go. I probably missed a capital letter or something. So if we look at this, we are just giving it a timeline name. It also can take in a folder, and we'll look at that in a second. But we get the timeline name, and we're just essentially looking at all these to just find the timeline name from the actual media pool. So we're going to use the folder, and by default, it's going to just choose the root folder, which would be the master bin. It's going to check through all the clips inside of that master bin if any of them have the type of timeline and the property of the clip name equaling our timeline name, then it's going to just give us the clip in a return. This essentially makes the variable that we set down here. This variable is just what's getting returned to us. Down here now, if there is nothing found through this for loop of the root folder, it's going to take the folder, which is first assigned to root folder, get the subfolder list, and then for the first subfolder, it's going to then reactivate this function. If it gets the clip, which is what this is, if clip is not equal nil, it will then return the clip. So when it calls this function inside of the function, if it does find the timeline name, it returns clip to this. And if this is an actual clip, then it returns the clip to the original call. That's where recursive things get a little bit confusing. So hopefully you followed along with that. Hopefully I talked slowly enough for you to actually grasp that. So essentially this is just searching through all of the folders inside of the media pool until we find something that matches a timeline and the timeline name. Now we can add in one more thing, and this is where things get a little bit confusing, but also I've simplified it down for us a little bit. I'm going to give us the function for converting a frame to a timecode. This is not taking in interlacing or dropped frames. This is just letting you convert to frames if you have the frame you want, and then the FPS that the frame was actually taken from. So we can see a bunch of math is happening in here, and then all comes out to just formatting the string to actually fit a timecode style. That's essentially all that we're doing. We are returning everything in this nice string format, so we're getting the formatted string of hours, minutes, seconds, and frame count. So it's really easy for us to just use this function, and then we don't have to worry about doing any of the math ourselves, thanks to Dan or whoever actually made this before him. I'm sure someone made this before Dan did. Dan may have just remade it in his own way. I'm not sure. I just found this from Snap Captions and thought it was really cool, and I wanted to show it to you guys. But hopefully it's been on the screen for long enough to where you guys are able to look at it and maybe look up some of these things and how they do things. I'm not even sure how some of these things work because I haven't really studied the math part of Lua yet in too much detail, so there's that if you want to take a look at it. Otherwise, let's go back down here to our function, and we're going to see it does have a squiggly here because we need to check for nil. We don't really have to check for nil. We could, but we don't have to check for nil for timeline clip. And then down here, we can see we have another squiggly down here because start time doesn't exist anymore, because start time was the get start for video clips. So let's go ahead and get the start time variable or the start frame variable here and put that there instead. So now that's just corresponding with that same exact variable that was before. So now we should actually be seeing proper time codes in the place of the frames. So let's take a look at that. And there we go. We can see it did convert everything correctly. Amazing. Okay, there's one more thing I want us to do before we end off today. I know this has been a pretty long video. There's a lot more to cover with this idea that I had. But just for this video, let's do something fun to actually utilize the information we have in this tree. So we converted that to actually time codes because we're going to use that time code for something else. We're going to come into here underneath tree, and we're just going to add in a button. We're going to give it the ID of go, give it text of go to selected clip. Pretty cool. We're going to give it a weight of 0, so it takes up only the amount of space that it needs to. Let's go and take a look at just what that looks like so you have a good idea. And while we're here, we're also going to be taking a look at changing some other things up. So there's our go to selected clip button right down there. So what's going to happen is we're going to select a clip, and then we're going to click this button, and it's going to go to this time code. Cool. Let's go and take a look at the actual tree things we were going to look at before. So let's go and take a look at removing header items, removing our alternating row colors, and also removing our root being decorated and being false. So let's go ahead and set all these to their opposites. So we're going to have the headers hidden. The roots are going to be decorated, so it's going to have a gap before the words on the leftmost side. And then our row colors are all going to be the exact same. So it's just going to be a big brick of the same color. We can see just what we expected. There's no top, there's a big gap, and all these are going to be without a alternating row color, which makes it a little bit harder to tell what's going on if there's a bunch of different things in here. We're going to come on down here above this other function and after our for loop to fill in the tree. We're going to add another function in here. This once again going to call to when on. This time is going to be on when go is clicked. And we're going to get the event again, but we don't actually have to use it again. We're going to make a variable for current item, and then we're going to actually set that current item to the current item. So we're going to get the items table once again. And once again, we're going to do example tree, and then we're just going to do the simple function of current item. And then we're going to get the time code from that. So we're going to get time code is equal to the current item dot text in column 2. So this is important. You have to remember which columns things are on. And then we're just going to do a simple timeline function that's going to set the current time code to time code. And it's going to want a string, so we don't have to convert this into a number or anything. That's all we have to do. It's just going to get the item from the tree, whatever is currently selected. It's going to get the text from the third column and then put that text into this function. And then it's just going to take us there. That's it. We did all this work for this one simple function to do what we want it to do. If we look at our script working, we can see we select masked mosaic blur, we press go to selected, and we just jump to that time code. We select comic speed lines, we jump to that time code. We jump to create professional templates for in macros, we jump to that time code. I'm going to be putting in the description below, obviously I'm going to be putting this example script that I just made in this video down there, but I'm also going to be putting in some documentation for the Basic Resolve API. You can find the Basic Resolve API if you come up here to Help, Documentation, and Developer. It's going to bring you into this folder here, and you can come into Scripting, and then come into the README file, and that gives you all the documentation, and you can search for this with a Control F. If we look on the left for these header sections, we'll see what they actually belong to. So we can see this is all the media pool items, this is the folder, otherwise called a bin. And then we also have the media pool itself being way up here with all of these functions that go with it. And then down past the media pool items, we have timelines. And this is not the prettiest format for all this. This is honestly a pretty ugly. What we can then instead do, close this and look at the actual links I have linked down below, because those give you a little bit more of an explanation and also usage on how to do what the API documentation there was trying to teach you to do. So go to those websites. There's a bunch of them to actually look at. We are also starting our own API documentation, but it's not going to be actually taking down what the functions are and what they do and how to use them. It's more talking about broader concepts and how to utilize the API and Lua to do the things you want to do. Go check it out. It's really cool. Next week, we're going to be going over some simpler stuff for Lua. We're going to be looking at Lua as the most basic idea it can be in. We're just taking a look at what variables are, how to use certain things together, why to use these things, when to use these things, and also how to use these in collection with an API, what an API is, why do you use an API, and all that kind of other larger questions that just beginners haven't yet understood from my videos. So we'll be teaching all about that in the next video, and then the one after that may or may not be the continuation of this video. There's just some extra little cool features that I just want to really show off to you, because they're really nice and really easy to use in other use cases, but just aren't really used that often. Editing Asher here. I just wanted to jump in because I forgot to say this when I was recording the video. Huge thank you for everybody for getting me to 1,000 subscribers. We've actually surpassed it by about 20, so it's already a fantastic jump start. You guys passed it when in the 2 weeks I wasn't even posting any videos, and that is insane. So huge thank you to everyone for doing that. Obviously, there's a lot of great stuff coming. I do have a 1,000 subscriber special video coming out with a tool release. Not really a tool, but a script release. So again, huge thank you to everybody for getting me to 1,000 subscribers. Next goal is 5,000. All right, I'll let the other me finish up the video. So that's going to be it for right now. Hope you guys enjoyed. Go ahead and watch this video right here to get the basic introduction of Lua for all your functions, your if statements and your loops, all that kind of stuff. Watch this video over here for maybe more advanced tutorial on some more UI stuff. This is some of the stuff I talked about before with drop downs and also the browse feature for finding your files and all that kind of fun stuff. 2-part series for that as well. So go and check that out over there. But with all that being said, I'll see you in the next one. Happy animating!